Royden Ogletree, who is just looking resplendent today.
Resplendent.
Yeah. Royden at KWTX. Royden's just gotten a promotion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's very excited. He's already at least slapped Garrett one underling, I think.
Yeah, no,
I mean, as a rite of passage, not out of any kind of maliciousness, just because that's what you do.
Yeah, even though Chad Votherine has been handling most of the responsibilities while they try and transition me to this new thing, I've slapped him a couple of times.
I mean, look, Chad's a great guy, but, again, you have to, establish those
dominance.
The dominance and the boundaries of this is how it is now that I'm the boss. I'm sure Darby, threw a couple kidney punches at you a couple times.
Yeah.
Just to let you know. I mean, that's how you enforce yourself as the new boss.
Yeah, ask Chris Williams a lot. I mean, he has stories to tell. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. So, no.
Darby was very malevolent with her time.
But
Not
Royden,
benevolent.
yeah. Well, it was both. Like, she was like...
The yin and the yang.
Yeah. Some days she ruled with an iron fist. Some days she brought snacks.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but it is a very important day in America. That is the first day that we see the college football playoff rankings.
Yeah, a thing that's going to cause a lot of people anxiety staying up tonight, really waiting on results.
Yeah.
Results-based polling and years, months and months of data going into this as well, all for the most important TV show tonight. Real quick, why are they doing that?
I think it just worked out that way.
Yeah,
I mean, it's always been on a
weird
Tuesday. You can't do
counter program.
But you know what's weird about it is that we won't know what the final playoff rankings are for a month.
Yeah.
We also may not know
the other
who
thing.
the president is for a month.
Right.
Like, that's our world now. So, like, we could find out in the same day, like, here's what we think is going to happen on both of them.
And Georgia plays a big role.
Yeah, just such a weird thing. But I did, Royden, want to talk to you first about Baylor and TCU.
Sure.
I did not. Garrett and I talked about it a little bit yesterday, but we did not dive full in. We had so much stuff to do before yesterday's show. I mean, a lot of production work. So we did a shorter show, and I saved some of it for you. Because you were
had
in
to run
Spain.
some election interference.
Yeah, there was all these things. Yeah, so I did. I had to vote 74 times. It's a lot.
It's a lot of polling places.
It's a lot. I mean, you have to hop around. I have to change. I had to dye my hair, re-dye my hair, undye my hair.
Yeah.
Mustaches, on top of a mustache, glasses, different clothes.
2 kids in a trench coat.
Accents.
Took a lot of work.
I'm
You're basically Fletch.
I'm here to be voting.
You're basically Fletch.
Yeah. Yeah. For the Trump. That's what I said. Okay, this doesn't track. But anyway, all of that. But no, we had a lot to do. So I didn't get to really talk about it that much. Royden, when were you a student at Baylor?
From 2012 to December of 2015.
So the glory days.
I mean, peak glory days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like all of them, actually.
Yeah, you had 4 good years of football, which is something no one has been able to said before or since.
Yeah, the only way that I could have made it better, I graduated early. The only way that I could have made it better was been there 1 year early for the Heisman campaign. But other than that, I experienced, the exact peak of Baylor football.
Yeah. I would say you did.
And then got out before the inevitable crash.
Yes. But you were there for 61-58 as a student. You were there for the last time they beat TCU multiple times in multiple years.
Yep.
And 3 out of 4 years, as a matter of fact. 11 wouldn't have been your first year, but 11, 13, and 14. So normally I would get on this show and dog a team miserably for rushing the field on a 4-4 team. But I know intimately how much these students and fans have suffered over the last couple years, and particularly over the last decade, suffered at the hands of TCU, including some TCU teams that were not good.
Right.
And Baylor teams that actually were kind of good and then still lost to them inexplicably.
Yeah.
or a TCU team that was great that you had on the ropes that you let come back.
And it would have like rearranged your season, like that kind of thing.
Would have ruined theirs.
Yeah.
And kicked a field goal with a timeout in their pocket, or it could have But they just walked down on the field very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, snap the ball, kick it, good. We got plenty of time. Nothing. I mean, those are the things that you have had to endure as a Baylor fan and alum.
Right.
So I did feel I was actually sitting in the stands on Saturday night, not in the press box.
Oh.
And you could feel the emotion of, oh my God, this just happened. And I turned to my friend John's son Andrew, who was sitting with us, and Andrew was like, "Are they going to rush the field?" And he's like, I don't know. And then, like, the next thing I know, he's gone. Like, we were sitting in the end zone. He ran all the way over to the student section.
That's a funny story. See you later.
Yeah. No, I think so. Maybe. Yeah, okay. Gone. And he wanted to go down and get there. And it was a great moment for Baylor. It's not like they tore down the goalpost or anything. Yeah. Basically, it was like, everybody get here and then file out of the stadium. It was a pretty short field storming by field storming standards.
Right.
But from your perspective, what was that a double whammy weight lifted for a lot of things? Is that Dave Aranda took not the full monkey off his back, but most of it. Like, if it's on there, it's barely hanging on, just pinching onto his clothes. And not only that, like, the TCU thing is kind of at least over for now, because there's the here we go again that happened about 3 times during that game the other night.
Yeah, it has to be for the reasons that you just mentioned, and I think not. If not for the main reason of, like, they'd won, 6 times in a row, and they'd won, was it 9 out of the last 10 times or something like that?
Yeah.
It'd become as close as this rivalry is historically, or was previously, it had become a really one-sided thing, and Baylor likes to hold themselves up in that TCU light, and there's a lot of fan arguments online. I mean, but if you just look at it objectively, TCU had more success than Baylor simply by the fact of making that national championship game. And you really, all the arguments you could make about oh, well, we won the Sugar Bowl, or, we being Baylor won the Sugar Bowl, and we've had this success with Aranda, and it had sort of tanked, especially with the season that you had last year, 2 seasons in a row of really failing to get where you wanted to be, and then this year starting out the way that it did. And really, if you just had any conversation with any TCU avatar online, it's like, guys, you just hadn't beat us. It really comes down to wins and losses. You just had not beat them. And it is a weight lifted in that way. I would like to see, you can't have everything all at once, obviously, but I would like to see, as a Baylor fan, them get this back to a more even-sided rivalry where you're not just losing at home and on the road and in ridiculous fashions, and make it to where it's like, okay, well, Baylor won 3 out of 5 years, and then TCU won a couple, and then the back and forth. We need to get back to that where it's been since the 1800s, I think. And that will go a long way into facilitating one of the few real blood feud rivalries that we have left in modern college football.
Yeah.
Of course, now Texas and Texas A&M are starting to will play again, and OU went over there, so they continue that rivalry. But it's one of the few that, like, in conference sort of long-standing rivalries that one has this passion behind it still that we're slowly losing in college football. And I appreciate that there's still that animosity there, and there's still this big time feeling of jubilation or relief or whatever you want to call it when a team wins. And I kind of tweeted, like, rushing the field cringe the other night. I actually had a couple drinks, so I said rising the field instead. Yeah. But somebody knew what I was talking about and quote tweeted me, and I was like, I immediately changed my tune. I was like, you know what? You're right, actually. I shouldn't be that cringe about it online. Like, It is what it is. Like, it's a little act like you've been there before, but kind of they hadn't.
They haven't. Think about the students the last 2.5 seasons.
Yeah.
And what they've gotten to experience at home in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
Until
4. Yeah.
Until the last home game, they hadn't won one.
Right.
In a long time.
Yeah.
And in the Big 12. And the only games they won were Air Force and, the guarantee game and all of that. And one of those guarantee games wasn't great.
Yeah.
Like, one of them wasn't like Texas State, but like one of the ones you won also not great.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is so that's the pain that they've had the last couple years. And it started almost immediately after they won the Big 12.
Yeah.
So they had this, oh my gosh, we just had maybe the best, most complete team, in my opinion, the best team in Baylor history. Like,
probably
the absolute top to bottom best team, because even those 13 and 14 teams that were here that were great, guess what they didn't do? They didn't go win the bowl game. Yeah, they went and lost. They won first one got destroyed by Blake Bortles in UCF. The next one blew the game against Michigan in the Cotton Bowl. Mm-hmm. So they didn't get to do that. And this team finished it and went and beat an SEC team in SEC country in the Sugar Bowl. And that was a huge, huge win for them.
That was my thing over the weekend, too. And I don't want to dive too far off into this because it can get real nasty. There was a real big potential for there to be a lot of weird energy in that stadium. They didn't invite the coaches back for a number of reasons we don't have to go over, and everybody knows why they couldn't do that. And people want to act incredulous online about why they didn't, but deep down in your heart why they couldn't invite the coaches back onto the field. In fact, one of the coaches was standing over there on the opposite sideline.
3 of the coaches.
And like, so that was a weird energy. Mm-hmm. There's the whole separate celebration at George's that happened over the weekend that had the coaches there, and players were wearing, some, not all, were wearing Coach Art Browell's t-shirts in the middle of the field. And it threatened to be this really weird energy if you lost.
Yeah.
And like I said, it felt like a weight was lifted a little bit from that game. And to your point of it was, I just wanted to dive into this, and you said it's the best big Baylor team that you had seen. I would tend to agree with that, because as much as people wanted to celebrate the Briles campaigns this weekend, people forget they just blew those games in embarrassing fashion at the end of the season. And maybe one of those seasons you're like, we should have gone to the championship game, or the playoff at least. Like, this is BS. And that's why you blew that. But Briles had a kind of a bad habit of blowing really big games.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody wanted to talk about that.
No.
And I think a big thing this week was finishing the battle, I think.
Yeah.
And proving that you can, just to get back to Aranda, proving that you have some gas left in the tank to maybe get this thing going in the right direction to where that team was 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I think he did a really good job of establishing that.
And look, if he wins the next one, then monkey's off his back, because the goal was bowl game.
Yeah, and that was kind of the arbitrary standard, maybe not set by the media. Even I don't think the people in the
3-9 last year, 2-10, 3-9. They were 3-9.
Yeah, I don't think the people in the program or the powers that be would have told you that was sort of the benchmark, but it kind of was the benchmark of what he needed to do. And I think if they win and they have the opportunity, look, Houston and Willie Fritz are now competitors. Mm-hmm. They play really hard-nosed football. And all of a sudden, Kansas isn't going to roll over, but there's a couple of these games, and you've never won in West Virginia, literally never won in Morgantown, but there's an opportunity for you to go and win 8 games. That's crazy, considering where we started.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it that this is This is a huge win. It's a huge win for them, and and look, going back to that whole thing, I do think that because Art Briles was at the game, he was there. He was clandestine as he needed to be. And I'll tell you this, I'm really glad that there was not a big push made to do that, because it's not fair to Dave Aranda, who's up against it, playing the big rival.
He already has all of these things.
Yeah, all these things going on. He was nothing but gracious to everyone, coaches, players, everybody who came back, paid for the suites and all those things, did all that. Because again, it's about keeping that establishment with the past and bridging that gap. And I do think that having those teams back and all of that let a lot of people move on.
Yeah,
because it's been hanging over us for almost a decade now of all of that stuff that's there and the animosity. And you know what? Now you can just let it go.
Hopefully.
Yeah, now you can just let it go. The one person, the only person who's still professionally hindered by any of that at all is Art Briles.
Yeah.
Which I think is really ridiculous at this point. You can't let him go be the quarterback's coach for somebody somewhere.
Yeah, the offensive coordinator for, what was it, Grambling or
something?
You
can't, all those things, it's stupid. There's no way for the guy to prove that he's redeemed himself without somebody letting him. It's,
it was a litany of things that happened over the weekend. And then it's Gatesville names their entire new stadium after him. Stephenville. Yeah, not Gatesville. Sorry, Stephenville names their whole new stadium after him, and so on and so forth. I don't want to make this an Art Briles thing.
No, but
I'm just saying there was an opportunity to have really weird vibes.
And they did. Lost and you know why? Because because they won. There's a catharsis. It's over. We can move on now. And every year can be about Baylor and TCU and whatever that rivalry is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be about all these things in the past. The only things that matter in the past are the games that you've won and the history of the actual on the field stuff. So I think it was overall good. And again, Dave Aranda wins more and more game. Monkey's off his back. I have no.
You have 3 opportunities to win one. Hopefully, this doesn't lead into a letdown game. You have all of these emotions of wanting to win this game, like we saw in 2014 when they won that TCU game
and lost to West Virginia.
And then lost to West Virginia.
Guess who's next?
The worst game that I've ever seen.
And guess who's next?
Yeah,
West Virginia and Morgantown. The world kind of repeats itself.
Yeah.
I think you saw Ted Vid did we played it on the show yesterday, of the similarities between the ending of those games with Shock Linwood's carry and then Bryson Washington's carry.
Very similar running back. I didn't put those two together. Very similar running backs too, when you think about it.
Absolutely. So, and then the only difference in the video, the kick was about the same length, really.
Yeah.
The only difference was
they were different hash marks.
Right-footed kicker, left-footed kicker. That's it. The only difference between it. So, so history repeats itself. Let's hope, for Baylor's sake, it doesn't. If you're a West Virginia fan, I'm sure you hope that it does,
right?
Because you need one. Although I think West Virginia fans are kind of in the mode now where, the hottest seat in the Big 12 entering the year was Dave Aranda, and it wasn't close.
Shifted back to Neil Brown.
I think it's Neil Brown. I don't know if there's anything he can do. Craig and Smokey have pushed back on that a little bit, Garrett, when we have that discussion.
Yeah, a little bit.
But how do you feel about it? I think you and I are kind of the same mind about it. I don't know what else he can do.
I just don't know. I feel like he's reached the ceiling there, right? If you weren't able to get over the hump this year with having Garrett Green back and the litany of running backs and all the talent you had in the trenches, and you had good opportunities at home, the way your schedule brought Pitt to you, and you had Penn State there. They've had great opportunities. They've never been able to capitalize on them. I think the statements he made about the tailgating and just coming out and enjoying it was the absolute worst thing you could say in Morgantown.
I missed this. What happened?
So he made a comment about the fans should just be happy with coming out and celebrating and tailgating, and it shouldn't really matter about the end result of the game. After you've already lost some crucial games at home, that's not going to play well. Then you have the people flying banners over. I don't see a situation where, even if he went out and won out, I don't think he can save his job there. And it's just unfortunate, but that's kind of where we're at.
Well, here's the thing. West Virginia's going to enjoy the tailgate, Neil.
Yeah.
They're going to do that no matter what. You got to win the football game. The just go out there and have fun does not fly at programs.
No.
It does not fly. And we can talk about moral victories a lot, and there's still some moral victories to be had in college football, in college athletics. I believe that. I don't really like we tried really hard at this point. I kind of am a wins-based person.
Yeah,
but
I think that moral victories are for
rebuilding teams.
Houston.
Yeah.
Houston can have a more like that. I think that game against Oklahoma was a moral victory.
Yeah.
And now do you know what, they've taken that like moral victory and turned it into actual victories.
Yeah.
Like you get like one or two moral victories of, oh, okay, this is something. And then after that, it's not.
And in fact, it's almost exclusive to rebuilding programs.
Mm-hmm.
Neil Brown, what is it, 5th year?
Mm-hmm.
5th year at that program? Mm-hmm. You were picked to be a dark horse in the Big 12 at the very least.
Yeah.
Some may have picked you to I didn't see if anybody did pick them to win it, but a lot of people were like, watch out for West Virginia, and then it's all just come crashing down. All that to say, they just have Baylor's number in Morgantown. That place is a house. I've said it on broadcast. I'll say it here. It is a house of horrors in Morgantown, West Virginia for Baylor. They had the most talented team that I've ever seen in 2014, at least on offense. And they go and it wasn't Oklahoma State where Bryce Petty's tripping over himself, but it's just like they're not completing passes. They go from scoring 61 points to 24 points against West Virginia, and it just all comes crashing down. That game a few years ago when they had to try to get back on track, and Blake Shapen had the best game of his career in through 3 quarters, and then he gets his head taken off and sort of resets his career, unfortunately, and then they blow that game. All those sort of things is you have to – I think if Dave Aranda really is back on track, and like we said, I think he is, but if he really is back on track, if they go in there, it doesn't matter how you do it, but if they go in there and they win against West Virginia, then it's really, full steam ahead I believe, for this program, I think. And again, Houston and Kansas aren't going to roll over, but if you win that game, you have the opportunity to win 8 games. That just resets the deck completely.
Yeah, no, it really does. I think that's a huge, huge deal for them. When we come back, it is time to talk about the playoffs and what the rankings might be tonight.